Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Rappler Talk series, #TheLeaderIWant. In 1998, Chiz Escudero began his political career as the first district representative of Sorsogon. This was followed by 3 more terms in the House of Representatives before he was elected senator in 2007. I remember him as the Young Turk. In 2010, he backed out of the presidential race and decided to support then-Senator Benigno Aquino. Today, he joins the 2016 elections as the running mate of presidential candidate Grace Poe. What's next for Chiz as he runs for the second top post in the country? Joining us today, Chiz Escudero, the vice presidential candidate. Thank you for joining us, Chiz.
My honor, karangalan ko, Maria. Good afternoon sa ating mga followers at saka televiewers.
Well, I have to ask you. I mean,
Yes.
how did you react with Comelec, the second district's decision last night on Grace Poe?
Siyempre nalungkot, nadismaya. Although we were expecting it, it's the reality of the decision being handed down to her. But we will appeal the decision to the Bank and later on to the Supreme Court if it is unfavorable. To my mind and for me, the decision is clearly wrong and not in accordance with not only the law but as well with the evidence as well that we presented before the Comelec.
What impact will this have on your campaigns?
No real impact insofar as the sorties, the schedules, and everything is concerned. Of course, it will have an impact because almost everyone is asking me, is Grace still a candidate? She is.
Yes.
She is still a candidate. The ballots will be printed February 10, 14, 2016. We have that much time to get a more favorable ruling either from the Bank or from the Comelec, or from the Supreme Court rather.
All of the controversy has affected her rise. I mean, she is the front runner and stagnated at this pace after the questions of her citizenship and her residency began. Do you see this as a problem?
Hindi naman talaga nag-stagnate. I'm a student of surveys and I study polling and surveys. It didn't really stagnate. It's just that the number of candidates haven't really been fixed yet. Before there was Duterte and everybody else. All of a sudden we removed Duterte and then all of a sudden you included Duterte. So it's really difficult to read because the number of candidates, the number of participants in the survey is changing for every survey period. So I guess it'll be more stable come January and subsequent surveys. You'll see, you get a better read of the surveys after that.
This is a fascinating election to watch. I mean,
Grace, to say the least.
Yeah, Grace.
To say the least.
So Senator Poe, Grace herself, how did she react last night?
Nalungkot siya, syempre. Kasama ko siya kagabi. Magkasama kami nung hapon din sa Senado. Nag-attend kami ng session. Sinabi ko na sa kanya na may balita, pero wala pa tayong kopya. So gabi nakita kami, may kopya na siya. Syempre nalungkot, pero bakas mo rin sa mata niya. Yung battle scars, ika nga. Nagsimula siya, wala namang bumabanat sa kanya, walang tumitira sa kanya. She was the darling of the media and everybody loved her because she was a senator, the #1 senator. Everybody wanted her to be their running mate. But as soon as she decided to run for president, everything changed. So she's learning quite a bit that when you're ahead, people will tend to hit you.
Of course.
For no reason whatsoever, simply because you're ahead.
Is she tough enough to take it?
I think so, and she's if not, she's getting there because nobody is tough enough really to face up to these kinds of attacks. Nobody, I think, is built that tough. Not even the most seasoned of politicians can actually withstand these kinds of attacks, especially if your daughter talks to you and asks you about hindi mo talaga kilala yung nanay mo, yung tatay mo, hindi naman nila alam yun eh. Hindi naman nila naunawaan talaga yung ibig sabihin ng adopted. So it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult especially for her, given that it's her first time to enter politics only in 2013.
You've been in national politics since 1998.
Since 2007.
Since 2007, so you were a councilor. What have you learned? How has it changed?
It's getting dirtier and dirtier given technology, given the benefit of anonymity. It's getting worse compared to before. Before, you needed to be on cam to be heard or to be listened to. Before, you needed to write a letter to the editor before you can be listened to. Now, anyone and anyone can say anything they want to say and it can reach you. All they have to do is tag you or go to your Twitter account or Facebook account and it'll reach you. And one way or the other, all politicians are human. They are affected and they will be affected always, one way or the other.
What role is social media playing in your campaigns?
Yun yung pinaka ginagamit namin ngayon kasi yun lang yung libre. I think I'm the only candidate for one of the top 2 posts that haven't posted an ad either in the newspaper or on television or on radio as of today. It's mostly social media. We post our comments there, we post our activities there, hopefully, it's been helping us.
What would you change as vice president? Again, you've had this experience in national politics. What would you change?
Insofar as the campaign and elections are concerned?
In general, as running as vice president, right? What do you want to run for? What do you want to change?
Insofar as elections and campaigning first, I would have thought that things would have changed for the better now. That people would be talking about not the candidates, but their platform and program. About the people the candidates will be serving. At the end of the day, it's still about the candidates. It's
Of
about
course.
80% about the candidates and 20% about what they intend to do
Right.
and what they plan to do. What
Is
do
that unexpected to you, though? I mean, you know how weak the political
I'm
party
eternally
system is.
hopeful. I'm an eternally optimistic and hopeful person. I always, every time there's an opportunity to change every 3 years, you can't take that away from me or anyone else in politics who's relatively still young. Although I've been in politics for quite some time, I'm still relatively young compared to the others. I'm eternally hopeful that it will change. It may not be within my time, probably after my time comes. Insofar as government is concerned, I want a government that plans more before it acts. I want a government that knows what it's doing instead of simply doing it by shooting from the hip. I had a wide experience insofar as how things should be done when I was chairman of the Committee on Finance, and I learned a lot. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I wanted that position, because I wanted to learn how government runs. And I learned a lot, following the same saying, an old adage that you should put your money where your mouth is. That's where you see how government projects are implemented, initiated, and how things actually get done. And I would want to be able to bring that in government. Our medium-term development plan is only good for 6 years. I think we're the only country with a medium-term plan that's 6 years. Other countries have 20, 30, 50, even 100-year planning. Tayo lang yata yung every 6 years, which coincides with the term of a president. I want to see a country that plans for generations ahead. And I would want to bring that to the table with Senator Grace.
You talked about platforms, ideas versus personalities, and yet all this, there are academic studies that say up to 80% of how people are going to decide is based on how they feel. Trust is a big thing now. I mean, what defines you? What can you tell people to show that you are trustworthy?
Actually, ang pinakamahirap na tanong na pwede kong sagutin, even when I was in college, the most difficult question was, why should we accept you in our organization? The same is true now. Why should we vote for you? Ang mahirap kasi hindi ko ugali magbuhat ng bangko, hindi ko ugali sabihin ginawa ko to, ginawa ko yan, sana nakita na o narinig na yung ginawa at nasabi ko, or if I'm asked a question, I will answer. Pero ang hirap ibenta yung sarili mo.
Then let me ask you, what defines Chiz Escudero?
What defines Chiz Escudero? Actually, nobody has asked me that question. Compared to the others?
I guess what is a core thing about you that stands for you? What do you stand for? Aside from, I guess, right, you go back to social media and authenticity. What is the core of Chiz?
For me, I've lived honestly all my life in government, and I would want to bring that forth, and that's at my core. I mean, so far as being able to do what I can do within the limits set forth in front of me, given my own constraints, I've always lived within my means and always moved and acted within my means. In government, the same would be true. The same would be true, meaning to say, all of my campaigns, I also ran within my means. Kung ano lang yung meron, yun lang. Kung ano lang din yung kaya, yun lang. But I've always tried to excel beyond what I was made for or built for since I was in college.
One of the stories that Rappler did was on your wedding in Balasin and brought up the ninongs that you had. I guess defining conflicts of interest and corruption, these are two
I've
issues.
heard that.
How do you define this for yourself?
I've heard that. I've never let friends and family affect my work, and I never let work affect my friends and family as well. It cuts both ways. Kung walang pakialam yung mga ninong sa politika, wala rin dapat pakialam yung politika sa ninong. We're free to choose who we want to choose, regardless of what people will say. I've always followed that rule from day one. I'll give you an example. Conflict of interest because some of our sponsors may influence me in my work. I think I've proven myself enough in the past years. Okay. Insofar as my first marriage is concerned, at least, my sponsor's there. Si Erap, ninong ko, I did not support him in 2010 and spoke against him even in 2010 with respect to some issues. Si GMA, ninang ko sa unang kasal, I filed and pursued 3 impeachment cases against her. Ambassador Cojuangco, Danding Cojuangco, was my sponsor as well. I left his party. And now I'm running against one of my former ninongs, Senator Marcos. So, wala namang kinalaman yun sa trabaho. Tulad ng ibang traditional na pamilyang Pilipino, kukunin mo mga ninong, yung gustong kunin ng magulang mo. Di ba? Yung nagtrabaho siya doon, kumpare niya yun, kaibigan niya yun. Now, in the case of Heart, most of our ninongs and ninangs were because of her. So, for example, we got Duavit and Gozon because she's working for GMA. We got Gabby Lopez because she used to work for ABS-CBN. We got Victor Rosario because of Viva Films. The other personalities there were there when we were starting out. They were actually close to us. Sabi ko kasi the second time around, wala na dapat at hindi na dapat kasama yung first show na ninong. Dapat yung kilala talaga namin. Yung nakakausap namin at mapupuntahan namin. And all of them are actually close to us.
So if you look at what you've accomplished now, what are you most proud of?
Still in Sorsogon, I would be most proud of creating the city of Sorsogon and being able to channel, as of this year, about 700 million a year already from a combined era of only 60 million. Hopefully it's being used properly because I'm not the mayor. But at least the funds are there, available and hopefully being spent for the good of the city. As a congressman too, being able to energize all of our barangays in one term. That was principally because of ERAP at that time. Because the PDAF at that time was not enough. And we were about 68% energized against the national average of 73%. But in 2 years of ERAP's term, we were able to energize 100% when the national average was, again, still at about 75, 78 at that time.
In terms of politics, what do you think you've accomplished? I mean, a key...
In terms of politics, I've always spoken my mind out. I've always received criticisms for speaking my mind. People have always thought differently of me because of the positions I've taken, but that has never stopped me to actually say what I believe in, expose what I think should be exposed, and basically exercise the right of free speech. With some, I have been proven wrong. With others, I was proven right. But as long as I believe in it, I will still stand for that.
So you said that the campaigning is more difficult now because of social media, because of technology, right? Politics.
Actually, it's not more difficult. It's more accessible now.
More accessible.
Yes.
But also, that means things are coming at you all the time. There's
Okay
no
lang
doubt.
naman. You either tune off. When you choose to tune off, you tune off for a while, gain some strength, then face up to it again, and answer everything.
In terms of politics and governance, have things improved in the time you've been in government?
Things have improved in the sense that officials are more accountable now. If there's one good thing that that came out of the impeachment of Chief Justice Corona, whether you agree with the impeachment or not, it proved one point that not everybody is above the law. That even if you're the fourth most powerful person in the land, you can actually be brought down from that high chair. And the concept of invincibility has somehow dissipated and disappeared. The same is true with respect to the senators that were charged and jailed. Again, whether you believe in the allegations or not, with the accusations or not, still, it proved the point that no one is above the law, no one is invincible, and everybody actually can be reached by the long arm of the law.
As Vice President, if you win as Vice President, you will need to work with any president, any of the candidates that are out there. Can you name their strengths and weaknesses?
I'm, of course, hoping it will be Grace.
Yes.
Strengths and weaknesses.
Let's start with Mar Rojas.
He's been in government long enough. That would be his strength. His weakness would be the same thing. He's been in government long enough, and I guess he knows the answers to all the questions. He won't be too open to listening to and hearing advice, even if they're well-meaning and correct.
Vice President Binay.
Vice President Binay, even longer in government. I
Yes.
think his weakness will be he'll be too busy answering allegations if he wins, fending off attacks if he wins, rather than governing. His strength would, of course, be his experience in local government, knowing what the problems of the local government units are. Whether or not he will actually be able to do something about it is different. At least he knows.
And then the wild card, Mayor Rudy Duterte.
His strength would always be very much like Mayor Binay, Vice President Binay rather. He knows local government.
Yeah.
But his weakness would be, I guess, himself. Whenever he speaks too openly, whenever he speaks his mind out, he tends to forget simple courtesies that are expected not only of candidates but of human beings.
What do you make of his popularity?
It's Trump-like, I would like to say. It's Trump-like. His words are exciting. Politicians don't usually use the words that he uses. So it tends to land in the headlines. It creates noise, it creates buzz. It will give the initial thrill, but I guess and I think it would only amount to that.
Well, the fact that Filipino voters seem to be drawn to these strongman type rulers. Duterte has actually said he will be a dictator, and then you have another vice presidential candidate, Bongbong Marcos. What does that show about the Filipino voter today?
You have to trust the Filipino voter. They know what they want and they'll do what's best for the country. Those who are more educated, those who are in the upper echelons of society, should trust the majority of our people insofar as deciding who our leaders will be. At the end of the day, in a democracy, we follow what the majority wants, not what the intellectual wants.
No, it's true, but what does this show about what they're looking for you?
It's too early.
Okay.
It's too early
It's
to
true.
say how they will
Yep.
vote. Again, it's the initial thrill. It's exciting. He sounds exciting. He says different things. It's nice to listen to him because you don't know what he's going to say. In that sense, it's attractive. Now, whether or not it'll be converted to actual votes come election day, that's a totally different story.
I just wonder whether that means Filipinos are willing to give up some freedom in order to get some order.
I don't
Is
think,
that a
tingin ko kasi para sa akin, hindi mo kailangan, pag meron kang magandang asal, hindi ibig sabihin nun weakling ka at mahina ka. Pag matapang ka at maingay ka, hindi ibig sabihin nun kaya mo ring patupad ang batas. I don't believe in the principle the ends justifies the means. No. In order to achieve the ends that we want to achieve, we must be able to attain and achieve it within the rule of law and within the bounds of law. It may be difficult, it may take some time, but that's the difficulty if you want to ensure that we won't punish anyone who is actually innocent. Ika nga nila, better set free 1,000 criminals than put in jail a single innocent person or impose the death penalty on a single innocent person. It may be difficult. It may be difficult to explain or accept to, especially if you're a victim. But who knows? If you have the relative who will be accused of a crime falsely, sino may alam kung kamag-anak mo, nanay mo, asawa mo, anak mo, siya naman yun on the receiving end of being accused and penalized for something he did not do. Mahirap din tanggapin yun.
So there are a lot of questions coming in on social
Please.
media. I want to throw one more before I get there, which is this. Your experience also has been used against you in many ways. I mean, your critics say that actually through this at Grace Poe, that the Chiz Escudero could be weighing her down. How did you react to criticism like this?
That's belied by the surveys. If you look at the surveys, of course there will always be critics, but that's belied by the surveys. The surveys don't show that.
And what did the survey show?
The latest polls showed Grace ahead and me ahead as well. Of course, it's not a certainty that it will be maintained. Bababa yun, tataas yun, ganun naman talaga ang survey. But at least at the time they said it, it's not accurate and it does not have basis.
And again, one last thing is
Please.
what do you stand for? Top of mind.
Honesty in government and genuine service. That's what I've been doing for the past 18 years, I think, in government.
So you have a lot of questions. Let me throw
Please,
some of them
please.
at you. At Dwayne Infante on Twitter says, "What is?" By the way, his hashtag, his Twitter handle is @SayCheese.
Yes.
So you can continue throwing questions. What is your take on the verdict on Jennifer Loudest's case?
I didn't follow that case as much. I think the decision was fair insofar as convicting Pemberton is concerned, but that brought to the fore the need to review the VFA. Because it again brought to issue the criminal jurisdiction and custody issue. Pagkatapos mag-issue ng judge ng ruling na dapat Muntinlupa, biglang babaguhin niya after a few hours, it makes you think and wonder why justice doesn't seem to be fair in our country. Pag Pilipino yun, diretso sa Muntinlupa yun. Pero pag dayuhan o Amerikano, particularly because of the VFA, diretso sa Camp Aguinaldo. It must be reviewed again and it must be revisited. I think so that hopefully it won't happen again, but should it happen again, I think Filipinos would not be able to understand why that is the case. Inaapi na nga tayo sa ibang bansa, pati ba naman sa sarili nating bansa, dehado pa tayo.
But this is the first time an American actually has been convicted, I think, no? I mean, of the last one was...
yes, but the issue on custody too, with respect to Daniel Smith, that was worse. He was brought to the U.S. Embassy. At least he's in Philippine soil now.
Right. Okay, another question from Twitter. Dwayne Infante, again. So, hi, Dwayne, you're asking a lot. And these are the only two questions we'll throw in. The Vatican and the Philippines are the only states left with no legal divorce. What's your stand on this? And how can you... Oh, then someone else followed up.
Long answer.
Please.
We actually technically have divorce in the Philippines. The distinction between annulment and divorce would be this, legally. Annulment, the ground should exist at the time of the marriage. Divorce, it can exist even after the marriage. Like violence, like beating, addiction, or alcoholism. In the Philippines, our Article 36 in the Family Code actually provides for almost both. Because it said, psychological incapacity, which is the inability of either spouse to perform essential marital obligations, which should exist at the time of marriage, and this is the important phrase, even if it exhibited itself after the marriage. So in a way it's divorce. It's not totally annulment. Before the family code, the only ground for dissolving a marriage would be the solemnizing officer is not really a priest. One is underage. Shotgun marriage. Literally, consent was vitiated. But now, because of this, you can actually see something wrong after you get married, as long as you can peg it that it was in existence already at the time of the marriage, even if you didn't see it yet. So for me, instead of creating a totally new debate about allowing divorce in the country, it's actually almost there. I think the challenge should be how to make it more affordable and accessible.
Correct.
So it's a question of affordability and accessibility, not so much a question of law anymore.
And this is a related question from @CaptainEJs on Twitter. How will you make annulment process simplified and affordable to most Filipinos?
Yes, affordable and accessible. I went through the process. In fact, Pope Francis came out with a recent encyclical that said you don't have to go to the regional archdiocese. You can actually get it from the provincial archdiocese. And it doesn't have to go to Rome, and they have to decide on it within 6 months. They're actually more efficient than our courts, if at all.
This is from, this is an interesting one, @FeMarcos. Asks, how would you react to a Duterte Escudero choice? Would you just sit pretty like Binay, or are you willing to meet halfway? Good question.
What do you mean by sit pretty?
I think he's asking, can you work with the Duterte presidency?
Can I work with the Duterte presidency?
Actually, his question is, how would you react to a Duterte Escudero ruling? Right? I think that means if you're vice president, if you win.
If that's the tandem that would win.
Yeah.
Part of the job of the vice president, if at all, whoever wins, when he takes his oath, would be to serve the incumbent or sitting president and to accept whatever job the president would be giving him, whoever that person may be. But of course, I would not want to think of any other person than Senator Grace. It'll be a challenge. You would have to sleep over it, I guess, and think your way through it. Unlike if it's Senator Grace, when matagal na kasi kami magkaibigan eh. Compared to other tandems, in fact, given all the problems and issues being thrown against the tandems, I think we are in the best position to overcome it because we've known each other quite some time. And even without this tandem in running for president and vice president, we have been and we were friends.
@MyJigs actually asks, what issue are you different? The exact word is, on what issue do you have an adverse thought with Poe? I think, what issue are you
Senator
different from her?
Let me see. On the basic issues, we're almost the same. On BBL, death penalty, I'm thinking of the issues one by one.
Yeah.
Focus on manufacturing.
Ever had a fight on an issue?
I think on amendments to the Constitution, she's less flexible than I am, although we're both open to a review. Okay. Because as a lawyer, I'm of the belief that the wisdom behind any constitution is the ability for a constitution to be changed and amended to adapt to the changing times.
Yes. Something with our country's not really doing that well right now.
I know.
Right? Yeah.
She's open to it, but more inflexible than my position insofar as that is concerned, given that I've seen it. Our Constitution next year will be 29 years old.
Yeah.
And it hasn't
And
been
you're
touched.
open to changing it.
I'm open to reviewing it and changing what needs to be changed. It's not etched in stone.
Right.
And we shouldn't change it simply because people don't want it. We should review it and convince our people if things need to be changed.
Well, like technology or the 60-40.
Take, for example, media. CNN, BBC, and any other station is inside my bedroom.
Correct.
I don't even know who owns it. And here we are saying it should be 100% Filipino owned if it's here.
I know this firsthand. We can talk about that later on. Let's take a question from Mindanao at G. Tinsef. If elected VP, how would you help solve the energy crisis, especially in Mindanao where the daily reserve is very low?
It'll be solved in 2 years, actually. It'll resolve itself. By 2018, our reserve in Mindanao will be 100%. The current capacity available in Mindanao is about 1,200 megawatts. The power plants being constructed right now is about 1,350. So double what Mindanao needs. So by 2018, Mindanao will have 100% excess capacity. It's Luzon that may have problems in 2018.
Wow.
Mindanao won't. There will be an oversupply of power in Mindanao. Why did it take too long? Because it takes about 2 to 3 years to process permits to construct a power plant, and it takes about 2 to 3 more years to actually construct it and put it within the pipeline. So it took a while before government was able to act and react.
So I'm going to go off this and just ask you. The series is called #TheLeaderIWant. For you, in choosing a leader, what do you look for in a leader?
Heart. The intention to govern properly and correctly and to put the best interests of our people in mind.
And as a leader, what guides you?
The same.
Heart is a very difficult thing, huh? What if...
The same. If for as long as you believe deep down in your heart that you're doing the right thing, honestly and deeply, of course, after knowing everything that you need to know about a certain issue and deciding based on that and not based on anything else, that to me is essential insofar as any leader is concerned.
If you could only work on one thing, what would you work on?
In government?
Change one thing now. And I know you have an encyclopedic knowledge already of...
One thing.
Yeah.
How we allocate government resources, because that's the key in everything else. Governance for me is allocating government scarce resources. If you're able to do that properly, prioritize things properly, then you would have governed properly as well.
This last administration, the Aquino
Hasn't.
administration. Well, that's what I was going to say. The best and the worst.
The best. They've been able, as I said earlier, they've been able to make people accountable that were usually untouchable. So it showed and proved that nobody is above the law. The worst, they're a bit slow insofar as implementing projects and not too accurate and good insofar as allocating our scarce resources are concerned. For example, I said that in the forum the other day. Underspending last year was 303 billion.
Right.
And yet they refuse to give us a tax relief of that will only cost them 30 billion. I don't understand that. If they can spend it anyway, why not give it to us so that we can spend it? Each time we spend it, they get their VAT anyway.
Right.
The same is true for...
Where's that coming from? Fear of corruption? Why do you think? I mean, you have an inside
underspending.
track. Yeah. Why?
Absence and lack of planning. For example, the classrooms.
Yeah.
The reason why it's delayed is that it took them quite some time. For example, in October of last year, we were asking them already. So you're asking for 43 billion for 2015 to construct 41,000 classrooms. Where will you construct these classrooms? Can we have the list? They could only come up with 30% of the 43 billion. So I said, by December, okay, give it to us. That was October last year. By December, they still weren't able to give it. Alangan namang hindi namin lagyan ng pondo yung school building. So we were forced to good insofar as that issue is concerned. So we passed it. But by June, they still didn't have the list. So they started bidding out projects, I think, for the school buildings by August or July. So they only started to implement it by October or November. That's why not a single school building funded by the 2015 budget is actually up out of the 41,000.
But you figure they would have learned from 2011 to 2012, right? I mean,
Well,
the
they didn't.
GDP went down
The
because
same is,
of
the same is
same
true with
thing
respect
again.
to farm to market roads. Farm to market roads before were at 6 billion. Previous to that, it was at 11 billion. This year, it's at 7 billion. Still, the list would come out sometime October. Again, I don't get that. When DPWH can actually list down projects worth 391 billion, down to the last specific project of concreting XYZ road from kilometer A to kilometer B. They were actually able to do that. It's line item. And yet you're talking of far smaller amounts, 43, 11, 7, or 6 billion. And still they cannot come up with a similar itemization of the budget.
Is that just the administration, or is that a systemic problem that...
Well, I think more than anything else, they didn't expect this much money. They were surprised there was this much money. Sorry, mas madali yata sabihin sa Tagalog yun. Mahirap na English yun eh. Nagtonospled na. Nabulunan yung gobyerno. Basically, the long and short of it, nabulunan siya. They took in too much too soon, and they simply couldn't manage the huge amount of resources given to each department. The absorptive capacity basically was low in each agency, and that affected actually their economic growth.
Of course, pump priming, right? If you don't spend, you can't actually.
Well, we're bragging
push
that
the
we're
economy.
spending 5% of our GDP for next year insofar as infrastructure is concerned, but if you can't spend it, that figure will be useless.
So the last question is
Yes, ma'am.
about you. So you've been in tough positions where you're not sure which way to go.
Like when?
Tell me one, and what guided you through a decision. Like for me, it would have been the kidnapping of Cestrilon, making a call, and why, or what is it for you? I mean, what's something that's tested you as a person that required leadership?
Kidnapping for me is
That's
a no-brainer because you should not negotiate. Once you start doing it, like what we're doing now, paying off the Abu Sayyaf, it will never end. It will never end. That should stop. Simply stop. Each time government says they don't know where the money came from, how it was paid,
Of course.
that's simply negligence on the part of government, why they allowed the payments to be made. That's why it's being done up to now. And I think the hostages taken from Samal are still out there. So no, that's not,
Yeah.
that's clear in my mind. Let me see. I think only in relation to politics, whether to run or not to run, or...
You didn't run in 2010 when people said that you were the change, a symbol of change then, right? Was that a missed opportunity?
In 2010, I didn't proceed with my intention to run. It was an intention to run because I never declared running for office. It was a difficult time because I knew it was not my time, not knowing if my time would come. The same is true now. Not knowing if my time would come, and it was difficult because I had to leave the party that I belonged to for quite some time in order to give them a free hand in deciding, because I didn't want to put them on the spot being forced to support me simply because I was their party mate, although they knew at the back of their minds that things have changed already. It's not so much playing safe, but not willing to put your friends and those who would like to support you on the edge. I had a parachute because I'd still be senator until 2013. They might not have a parachute. It would have been unfair to them. That was quite difficult at that time. And if I was only thinking of myself, I might have just simply made the jump and plunged. But no, I thought of the people who were supporting me, who believed in me at that time. They would be put on the spot because I myself didn't believe and wasn't convinced that it was the right time, again, without saying that my time will come.
Interesting. The title is The Ambition and Destiny of Chiz Escudero. The
Anong
ambition
ambisyon?
and destiny
Anong
of
ambisyon?
Chiz Escudero.
My destiny, only time can tell.
Yeah.
History will be the judge of that. My ambition is actually it's not connected to any position. Actually, ambition ko yung rason ko ba't pumasok ako sa politika. I wanted to be remembered for having done something. I cannot write. I cannot leave a book behind. I cannot paint. I do paint, but it's not good, so I don't think it'll be remembered. I can't act, I can't dance, I can't sing, I can't leave a movie or a song or a dance step behind. Hopefully, I will be remembered for having done something in this particular corner of the world and in government and in our country.
Worst case scenario, if Grace Poe, if Kamala Bank says she cannot run, you have a senatorial slate, you're a vice presidential candidate, what will happen?
We will appeal to the Supreme Court and hopefully get a TRO so that her name will still be in the ballot.
So
and
you will
hopefully
run.
the Supreme Court will rule in her favor.
And if that doesn't happen?
As a lawyer, I was taught to respect the decisions of the court even if I vehemently disagree with it. Nung nagsalita nga si Pangulong Aquino laban sa Supreme Court insofar as the DAP is concerned, it's okay to vent out against the Supreme Court for as long as in the end you say, but I will accept and respect it, but it's wrong, but I will always respect it. But I'm hopeful, Maria, that it won't happen. Why? I'm holding on to a precedent of the court in relation to the FPJ case in 2004, where the Supreme Court said We cannot leave to the unelected members of this court the power and right to decide who the next president will be. That decision is best left to the sovereign Filipino people. Hopefully, if they follow that president, they have no other way but to rule in favor of the candidacy of Senator Grace and let the people decide.
And the tie between you and Grace are both personal and professional, yes? I mean, she's very...
Yes, but one reason why that is maintained even up to now, especially
It
up to
was
now.
from the FPJ when he ran
Yes.
for president, and she remembers you fondly.
Actually, we became closer. We knew each other already at that time, but we became closer after her father died, because that's when everybody else all of a sudden became scarce. But insofar as Senator Grace is concerned, we remain friends even up to now, even during this difficult time. The same is true with Pinoy, because I follow also one basic rule. I only answer when I'm asked. That's a good rule to follow. I never volunteer information because usually, well, he's already the president, so I only answer when he asks me. I don't volunteer. The same is true with Senator Grace. She's the presidential candidate. On issues and how to handle the campaign, I only answer when I'm asked. It's a relatively good rule to follow.
Your last thoughts on leadership, and what lessons you've learned in leadership, what you look for. Only people who've really led know how difficult it can be.
Para sa akin, isa lang yung rule na sinusunod ko sa pagiging leader o sa paninilbihan sa gobyerno. Kung ano ka bago ka pumasok, ganun ka rin dapat paglabas mo. That will define how you served and how honestly and trustworthy you were while you were serving. And that will also make you live a more meaningful and comfortable life after you leave government. Tinuro sa akin ng tatay ko yun at magandang karanasan yung pinagdaanan ko doon. In 1986, my father was Minister of Marcos from 84 to 86 only for about 18 months. Ang dami niyang kaibigan nun, ang daming nagpapadala ng regalo pag birthday niya, ang daming lechon. Tapos nung nawala si Marcos after 86, nawala silang lahat. Pero yung buhay namin hindi nagbago. Doon pa rin kami nakatira, yun pa rin yung kotse namin, yun pa rin yung eskwelahan pinag-aaralan namin, nagpupunta pa rin kami sa parehong restaurant tuwing linggo sa Max. So it didn't change. The others, their lives changed drastically because they allowed politics and their position in government to change their lives as well. I have followed that rule strictly also in my own sphere and in my turn this time around. Since I entered politics, I've been living in the same townhouse. I'm still living in the same townhouse up to now. I was a congressman for 9 years in Sorsogon, and I lived in my father's house because there was no need to have your own separate house. And after my stint as a congressman, I still live in the same room in my father's house. So it's still the same, and it's a good rule to follow.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. We've been speaking to Vice Presidential candidate Chiz Escudero about the 2016 elections. These are going to be amazing times. 5 months left. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for watching. At Say Cheese,